Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. After our documentary, Warehouse, The Life and Death of Tristin Murphy, premiered a couple weeks ago, the judge who sentenced Tristin Murphy to prison watched the piece and was affected by what he saw. 2 months after Judge Scott Cupp sentenced Tristin to 3 years in prison on a littering charge, Tristin, a diagnosed schizophrenic, killed himself with a chainsaw at a state prison west of Miami. The story of Tristin Murphy illustrated how the criminal justice system fails people with mental illnesses. Last week, I sat down with Cupp, who retired from the bench earlier this year. This is the first time he has publicly commented on the case and the larger issues of how to treat the mentally ill.
Well, before we get started on that, this is very important to me. I did see your piece, and I regret it now. I started to walk over to my computer and send Mr. and Mrs. Murphy a short email saying how sorry I am for what they went through, and I kick myself because I did not.
Scott Cupp was the Charlotte County judge who sentenced Tristin Murphy in 2021.
You doing okay today, Mr. Murphy?
I'm doing good, sir.
All right, you know why we're here today?
Yes, sir, for sentencing.
Cupp came in at the tail end of Tristin's case after other judges had been involved in decisions about Tristin's mental state. Cupp was there to take Tristin's guilty plea and sentence him.
Be adjudicated guilty to felony littering, sentenced to 36 months, Florida Department of Corrections, concurrent with the sentence just imposed. You remain in the custody of the Charlotte County Sheriff for transportation to the Florida Department of Corrections. Good luck to you, sir.
When I first reached out to him last year to talk about what happened to Tristin, Cupp said it wouldn't be appropriate for him to discuss Tristin's case. But Cupp has since stepped down from the bench, and when I called him last week, he said seeing our stories and hearing his own voice in them affected him, causing him to start, but never finish, the email to Tristin's parents. So why didn't he send it?
I don't know how they would receive that, and I didn't want to make things
Well, what
worse.
do you want them to know?
Just that I'm, just as a father, as a fellow citizen, as a human being, how sorry I am for what they went through. That's all. I just want to tell them that I'm sorry for their loss. What they suffered through with their son hits very close to home. I have family members that unfortunately have suffered with some pretty significant mental health issues. I have an idea what they went through, and it's horrible, it's hard.
There was a moment in the documentary where Tristin's father actually expressed sorrow and sympathy for Judge Cupp.
It wasn't fair to him to have to put that on his plate, that he knows he condemned a kid to death for driving a truck in a pond. Jesus Christ, what's with our society?
Wow, just very gracious and forgiving spirit. I don't know if he's worked through the anger at all of us.
I think the mom still has the anger.
I don't blame either one of them. We can dissect why and what happened, but at the end of the day, it doesn't, it sounds trite, but it doesn't bring Tristin back to them, and I know that.
Dissecting what happened in Tristin's case is a complex affair that boils down to a simple fact. Jails and prisons have become warehouses for the mentally ill, and that treatment is virtually non-existent.
When you go to judges' school, they would use the expression, these are the tools that you have in your toolbox. Well, using that analogy, we don't have enough tools in our toolbox to deal with competency and NGI and the mental health issues that the courts are faced with. I always felt and not just me, I'm sure all judges feel that way, just don't have the tools to adequately deal with it. You do the best you can. From a professional standpoint, I don't know that I could have done anything differently. That maybe sounds a little cold or cruel. From a personal standpoint, it's heartbreaking. It's just absolutely heartbreaking on so many different levels.
One of the issues exposed in our reporting was on competency restoration, the process where a person who is found to be mentally incompetent is sent to a state hospital where they are stabilized and then sent back to court to almost always plead guilty.
I don't want to say it's a joke, that's too cavalier, but it's not effective. It's just keeping the train moving. We've got these cases, we've got to deal with them. We can't, in theory, what you're looking for is moving the cases through the system. That's what judges are, what we're paid to do. We do justice, but you also, you got to move the cases or the whole system backs up.
Under state law, once a judge declares that a person is mentally incompetent, the state's Department of Children and Families, known as DCF, has 15 days to get that person to a treatment facility. In Tristin's case, it took nearly 10 months for him to be seen by a psychiatrist and ruled incompetent, and then another 171 days before he was moved to a treatment facility. Cupp said he saw delays like that all the time.
We spoke briefly before we went on, and you pointed out the statute, which is constantly being violated. And I guess one of the solutions is that we start holding organizations like DCF and these hospitals in contempt, but that's not going to solve anything.
It might. Maybe. Maybe if you start holding the DCF secretary before judges, then suddenly there'll be a drive to create additional bed space.
Well, it would bring attention to it. The solution to this lies in the big L word, the legislators. You got to, and I really like Judge Leichman's idea of urging the Supreme Court to hold a summit and get all the players, and then start with some, not for, looks and eye candy, but let's really sit down and see what changes we could make that make sense and that work towards solving the problem. One of the players needs to be the state attorneys and, and the police, but not so much the police, because they have an extremely difficult job. But who do the state attorney's offices choose, and they have the discretion to put into the system? Once they're in the system, judges are stuck. They got to deal with the cases. They got to move them.
Well, let me ask you, in this case, the driving the truck into the pond and being charged criminally and prosecuted for third-degree or felony of littering, a littering charge. Is that a case that should have been brought?
I could say this now because I'm off the bench. Does it seem a little excessive? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Could there have been another way to deal with that and handle that? Absolutely.
How much of your time as a judge is spent dealing and navigating with defendants who have mental illnesses?
I'd have to sit and break it down, but it was too much. Because the rest of the cases, by and large, they're easy. You get maybe motions to suppress that take some time. You write some orders. You have other motions to deal with. But when you have somebody, I would say one person with the kind of mental health issues that we're talking about, they're probably worth another, 10, 20 regular inmates who don't have those issues.
In other words, for every person you're dealing with a mental health issue, it's almost the equivalent of 10 cases.
Could be. That's just something off the top of my head. As far as time spent in court, time looking at reports, time trying to get somebody to come in and evaluate them, they're just a nightmare. They're a nightmare for everybody.
Cupp points to the work Judge Steve Leifman has been doing for years in Miami, creating a system that diverts people with mental illnesses out of the jails and into treatment programs where they can get the care they need.
We're all just jealous of him because he's got, I would joke a few times. I had, you have friends and they have usually, adult sons or daughters that they only have so much control over, and their fear is that they're this far from committing crime. And I remember, now that you mentioned, I remember joking with one of them, can you get them to move down to Dade County? Because of that. And they were like, and I said, well, and then I started telling them about what they're looking. I said, if it happens where you live now, whew, you're in for a world of hurt. If you get down there, he's got a chance. So that's sad. Depends on where you live.
Should it be that way in the state of Florida?
Absolutely not. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be like that anywhere.
Cupp said he continues to hope the legislature will tackle this issue in their upcoming session in January.
You need some folks in the legislature who I think maybe might be ready to start coming around, to start championing the cause and looking at it. I think the way to approach it may be, it's a little cynical, but like everything else, and the judge in Dade has touched on it, from an economic standpoint, hit them from that. It makes no sense. We're spending a disproportionate amount of money on mental health, folks who require mental health treatment in facilities that don't have the, I know what the sheriffs will say, yeah, we have that, we have the treatment, they have to say that, but they're not equipped to deal with it, and it costs a lot of money. So maybe that's the way to approach it. Look, this could be a tremendous savings from not only at the local level, but the state level with the prisons. How many people are in state prison basically because they're mentally ill and they could be dealt with differently, but once they get there, then we pay to house them, to guard them, to feed them, to transport them, all that.
For Cupp, the one thing that is clear is that doing what we've been doing is no longer an option.
We need help. They need help. The system isn't working for these folks, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse.
What makes you say that?
Because it's going in the wrong direction for all the reasons, everything we just talked about. More and more mentally ill people are going to jail, to prison. Yes, some are getting diverted. There are some drug courts. There's some programs like Dade, but not enough, and not on a big enough scale. So it's not going to go away. The problem's not going to go away.
When we come back, we talk to one of the key legislators in Tallahassee who agrees more needs to be done. And if you'd like to see our documentary, Warehouse, The Life and Death of Tristin Murphy, you can find it on CBSMiami.com. It's right there on the homepage. We'll be right back.